Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Long before the first lungs drew breath or the first eyes blinked open beneath ancient seas, something smaller than thought itself stirred in the silent dark. It was not alive, not quite, but not entirely lifeless either. It floated, weightless, shapeless, a fragment of something once whole. Imagine a thread unravelling from a forgotten tapestry, a whisper of code left adrift when no one yet knew what language was. That thread, tiny as it was, could not eat or walk or think, but it could do one thing that would shape the future of life. It could copy itself. It did not build the machinery to do so on its own. Instead, it learned a different way. It would borrow, it would enter, it would use, and from this silent seed, the first virus came to be, not as a creature, but as a clever echo. At that time, Earth was a boiling cradle of potential, its oceans thick with minerals, its skies tinted orange and blue with methane and sunlight. Life itself was still only a fragile experiment, a slow assembling of molecules into meaning. The earliest cells, simple, round and trembling, floated through warm pools and shallow shores. They had only just begun to build walls around themselves, holding their insides in and the chaos out. And somewhere, perhaps at the edge of a tide pool or deep in a thermal vent, a single piece of genetic code slipped into one of these cells. It had no arms, no legs, no hunger. It was a passenger, a pirate, a whisperer of blueprints. Once inside, it found the machinery it lacked, the enzymes, the tools, the code readers. It told the cell a lie, make more of me, and the cell, not knowing truth from trickery, obeyed. There are scientists who believe that viruses came from the very same materials that built the first cells, that they are ancient remnants of the earliest life, shards left behind when the first creatures learned to contain themselves. Others wonder if viruses are even older than cells, a primitive form of information that drifted through the primordial soup, waiting for something to infect. Still others suggest that viruses began as parts of living cells that broke free, like runaway genes rebelling against their hosts. No matter the origin, they were there. Tiny ghosts with no body of their own, haunting the insides of living things. Imagine one of those early cells, round and soft, floating through a quiet tide pool under the faint sun. It divides slowly, clumsily, using energy drawn from the hot earth and the strange molecules around it. It is vulnerable, blind, yet full of potential. Now imagine a virus, not much more than a thread of RNA wrapped in a protective shell, brushing up against this cell. It does not knock, it does not ask permission, it slips inside, and once inside it speaks only one command, make me again. The cell obeys. Suddenly, what was a calm, steady builder becomes a factory churning out copies of the intruder. Eventually the cell bursts, and the new viruses scatter like dandelion seeds in the wind. It was not malice that drove the first virus, only method. It had no thought, no feeling, no plan, but its way worked. It spread. It persisted. And in doing so, it shaped the way life evolved. For every virus that destroyed, there were others that helped. Some became part of the host's own code. Even now, your own DNA carries the fingerprints of ancient viruses, tiny fossils hidden in the spirals of your genes. They are the old guests who never left, the echoes of infections long healed. Some of these viral fossils protect you from newer invaders. Others whisper instructions to your cells. A few even help shape your brain before you are born. In this way, viruses are not just destroyers. They are part of the story of life, strange and essential. They forced cells to build defenses, to communicate, to evolve. They created pressure and chaos, and from that, life learned resilience. In the beginning, the first virus may have seemed like a glitch, a mistake, a rogue message. But that message carried something powerful, the ability to copy, to persist, to become a part of something greater than itself. Now close your eyes and drift backward through time. Imagine the Earth when it was still young, its surface steaming, its sky thick, its waters dancing with possibility. Imagine the first stirrings of life, the first bubbles of cell walls, the first whispers of DNA. And in that soft, ancient moment, imagine a virus, just a wisp of code entering the story, not with a bang, but with a breath, not as a monster, but as a mirror. It did not create life, but it shaped it, it challenged it, and in challenging it, it helped it grow. So the first virus did not come from one place or moment, but from a gradual unravelling, a slow, quiet birth in the shadows of life's beginning. It was not announced, it did not declare itself. It was simply there, as inevitable as wind, as silent as a seed, as strange as a song with no singer. And from that first presence came a lineage that would dance through every branch of the tree of life, touching bacteria, animals, plants, and people, changing them, teaching them, testing them, the breath before infection, the invisible thread. Now let us drift deeper into the ancient silence of life's unfolding, where the line between living and not living grows softer, more blurred, like the edge of a shadow at dusk. Imagine those early viruses multiplying across the oceanic cradle of Earth, each one a fragile code wrapped in a protein shell, each one seeking only to repeat itself by borrowing what it could not build. These tiny fragments of genetic information, some made of RNA, some of DNA, were not uniform. Some were simple loops of letters, barely long enough to instruct a cell. Others were more complex, more cunning, and yet all of them shared a secret. They needed others to exist. Without a host, they were inert. But within a host, they became alive in a borrowed way, blooming like frost on glass, beautiful and dangerous. We tend to think of viruses today as enemies, bringers of disease, disruptors of balance. But the story is older and quieter than that. In the beginning, viruses were not evil. They were part of the great experiment of life, pushing boundaries, testing limits. In fact, some scientists now believe that viruses played a central role in evolution itself. They were not just parasites, they were innovators. When a virus entered a host cell and inserted its genetic material, sometimes a mistake would occur. A small piece of viral code would become embedded in the host DNA, and if that cell survived, if it passed on its code to its offspring, then the virus's whisper became part of the host's song. This is how ancient viruses became part of the human genome. Today, nearly 8% of your DNA comes from viral ancestors. That means every breath you take, every thought you have, is shaped in part by the ghosts of ancient infections. Let's float now to a time when multicellular life was still a dream, forming in the watery dark. Early bacteria and archaea ruled the earth, forming colonies, building mats in the shallows, surviving heat and acid and time. Viruses danced among them like invisible sparks, some destroying their hosts, others trading bits of information. This viral swapping, called horizontal gene transfer, may have been one of the most powerful forces in early evolution. A virus could move a useful gene from one cell to another, spreading traits not through generations, but sideways across species. This meant evolution didn't just move like a tree growing upward. It moved like a web, branching and looping, pulling pieces from here and there. Viruses were the threads. Imagine now a virus that once infected an early microbe. Its code was slightly flawed, just enough to fail in its usual plan. Instead of bursting the cell, it became trapped within it, and the cell, finding no immediate harm, continued to divide. Over time, the viral code adapted to its new home. It lost its armor. It learned to help. One day it gave the cell a new ability, perhaps the power to recognize a nutrient or resist heat. The cell thrived. Its descendants thrived. And the virus, no longer a parasite, had become something else. A partner, a part of the whole. In this way, viruses did not merely coexist with life. They shaped it from within. They encouraged complexity. They triggered defense systems. One of the most important tools in our immune system, the ability to recognize and attack invaders, likely evolved in response to viral threats. Even CRISPR, the famous gene editing technology, was born from a defense system bacteria developed to fight off viral attackers. It is as if life, under pressure, learned to write poetry from the threats it faced. Every challenge forced a new adaptation. Every adaptation became an opportunity. And so the presence of viruses was never simply destruction, it was invitation. Invitation to grow stronger, to build walls, to open gates, to send messages. Even in plants, viruses play roles we are only beginning to understand. Some viruses help plants survive drought. Others make them more resilient against insects. In forests, viral particles drift among the leaves like invisible pollen, part of the unseen ecosystem that balances life and death. If you were to scoop a handful of seawater today and place it under a microscope, you would see millions of viruses shimmering in the light, more than the stars in a night sky in just a single drop. They are not there to hurt you. Most of them cannot. Instead, they are part of the balance, part of the flow. Some infect plankton, guiding the cycles of the ocean. Some carry genes across the sea. Others are still mysteries, their purpose unclear, their origin forgotten. But they are there, always there, moving between the living and the almost living, keeping the story of life in motion. Consider the mitochondria in your cells, tiny power plants that turn food into energy. These were once free-living bacteria, swallowed by ancient cells in a dance of survival. Some scientists wonder, could viruses have helped that union? Could the pressure of viral infections have driven cells to cooperate, to merge, to protect each other? It is not proven, but the question lingers like mist over a field at dawn. In every chapter of evolution, viruses have been close by, not writing the story but editing it, suggesting lines, deleting paragraphs, changing the rhythm. Even in the quiet world of embryos, viruses leave their mark. During human pregnancy, a special layer of cells forms between mother and baby called the placenta. It allows nutrients to pass while protecting the fetus. One of the key genes that makes this possible comes from an ancient virus. Without that viral gift, mammals as we know them might never have existed. What was once an intruder became a bridge. What was once a threat became a promise. Now picture the timeline of life stretching across the cosmos, From the first bubbling chemicals to the rise of fish, trees, mammals, minds, threaded through it all are viruses, too small to see, too numerous to count, too influential to ignore. They do not think, they do not plan, yet they provoke thought. They demand change, and in doing so they help life adapt to every hardship, every shifting climate, every new challenge. They are the soft wind that bends the tree, the tiny spark that drives the storm. So when we ask where the first virus came from, perhaps the deeper question is this: what does it mean to be alive? A virus challenges our definitions. It blurs the line between organism and mechanism, between selfishness and connection. It cannot live alone, yet it can change the world. It cannot eat or breathe, yet it can awaken whole immune systems, shape genomes, and build bridges between species. It is not life as we define it, but it is part of life as we know it. And perhaps, as you lie still and breathe gently, letting this story settle into your bones, you can feel that truth. That something so small, so silent, so strange could leave such a deep imprint on the world. That life is not built only by builders, but also by challengers. That even a whisper in the code can echo forever. Let us now return once more to the quiet beginning, to the gentle tide of time that carried life forward through darkness, warmth, and change. The first virus, like a drifting thought, had no ambition, no hatred, no name. Yet it endured. Through extinction and emergence, through ice ages and fire it passed, changing forms, slipping between creatures, adapting not by will but by possibility. And as life became more complex, as cells joined to form tissues, and tissues gave rise to beings that moved, sensed, and remembered, viruses followed, always invisible, always present, always part of the song. The breath before infection became a whisper woven into the breathing of life itself, not to destroy, but to shape, to question, to invite transformation. In ancient oceans where the first animals flickered into being, viruses became sculptors. Coral reefs glowing with colour and life were influenced by viral tides. Marine viruses helped control the population of algae, keeping ecosystems in balance. They swept through microbial communities, guiding the rise and fall of tiny empires beneath the sea. It was not war, but rhythm. Not punishment, but pruning. The virus, by copying itself, taught life to regulate, to defend, to rebuild. Each viral wave was followed by rebirth. Even today, entire ecosystems depend on viral action to cycle nutrients, to release hidden energy, to spark renewal. And when animals emerged onto land, blinking against sunlight for the first time, viruses came with them. Birds, mammals, insects all carried their own viral passengers. Some viruses became lifelong guests, sleeping silently within their hosts. Others flared briefly, then disappeared. But each interaction was a lesson. The immune system learned its intricate dance from viruses, when to attack, when to forgive. Our very survival depended not just on resistance, but on remembering. And memory in biology is made of molecules, shaped in part by viral shadows. In the human story, viruses have played every role. Villain, messenger, partner, prophet. Some brought suffering, others brought gifts. The great pandemics of history, from smallpox to influenza, left scars on civilizations, but also awakened our understanding of disease, of hygiene, of immunity. The very idea of vaccination, to teach the body to remember without suffering, is a strange kind of peace treaty between life and virus. We borrow the shell of the invader and use it to train our defenses. We turn harm into help. It is a dance as old as the first cell, as delicate as light falling on water. Inside your body now, viruses rest like old photographs tucked in the corners of your genes. Most do nothing. Some scientists believe may awaken under stress, or change how certain cells behave. Others have become quiet helpers, involved in the development of the brain, the regulation of reproduction, even the defense against tumors. They are not just relics of past battles, but active threads in the fabric of who you are. You're not only descended from mammals, from fish, from microbes, you are also the echo of viral encounters across time. In every cell, a history. In every breath, a whisper of something far older than memory. Now imagine a child being born, the world rushing into their lungs for the first time. Around them float invisible particles, some dust, some pollen, some virus. The immune system, still untested, begins to learn. It learns by touching, by failing, by remembering. Some viruses will teach it strength. Others may bring fever or illness, but always there is growth. The child will carry fragments of ancient viruses in every strand of their DNA, and one day pass those fragments on. The lineage continues not through kings or names, but through tiny messages hidden in our code. Scientists today still cannot say for certain where the first virus came from. Was it a piece of broken RNA set free from a careless cell? Was it a failed experiment in early replication, a twist of chemistry that found unexpected power? Or was it something older still, a whisper in the molecules, a forgotten pattern that drifted into purpose? Perhaps it came from the same place all questions come from, the space between what is and what might be. That quiet, fertile space where time and possibility hold hands. And so we arrive not at an answer, but at a soft circle. The virus, once thought to be a destroyer, reveals itself as a mirror, reflecting back to life its own fragility, its own creativity. Without viruses, evolution would move more slowly. Without viruses, life would be simpler, smaller, perhaps even impossible. We owe them not our love, perhaps, but our recognition. They are the thread that runs between the chapters, the editors who do not write, but who shape the writing all the same. As you lie back now, let your breath settle. Let your thoughts float like tiny particles on an unseen current. Somewhere in your body, ancient viral code is keeping time. Somewhere in the world, new viruses are emerging, not with malice, but with movement. They will challenge us. They will teach us. They will ask us again and again, what does it mean to be alive? And each time, life will answer with adaptation, with memory, with story. In the end, the first virus did not come from fire or stone or breath. It came from change, from the willingness of the universe to try again, to replicate, to test the borders of what might live. It was not an accident. It was not a mistake. It was a question, one we are still answering every day in every cell. And as long as life continues, that question will remain, echoing softly like a ripple in still water, like a breath before infection, like a thread of possibility stretching forward into the quiet unknown. Beneath the quiet turning of our cells, within the folds of every strand of DNA, there are hidden echoes, fragments of things that once lived, moved and multiplied in a time too ancient for memory. These are not fossils of bone or shell, but of code. They are remnants of viruses, long faded from the world, but still whispering within us. Imagine the genome not as a blueprint, but as a library filled with old stories, some written by ancestors, others by intruders who stayed so long they became family. These ghost codes do not breathe or pulse, but they are there, folded into the instructions that tell your body how to grow, how to heal, how to think. They are not invaders anymore. They are part of the architecture of life. Long ago, when the Earth was still a wild experiment of gases, tides, and flickering light, life was struggling to find form. Cells, barely more than bubbles wrapped in delicate membranes, drifted through the oceans, trading molecules, copying themselves, and sometimes, without warning, changing. Into this fragile rhythm came viruses, carrying genetic code like notes from an unseen composer. When they entered cells, they sometimes left behind pieces of themselves, and when those pieces survived, when they did not destroy but instead lingered, they became part of the host. Over time, these viral fragments were copied alongside the cell's own DNA. Some were silent, others learned to sing in harmony with the host. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the code of the virus became the code of the creature. You carry these codes now just as your ancestors did. Scientists call them endogenous retroviruses. They are like faded ink on ancient pages, not erased, just quiet. Almost 8% of the human genome is made of these viral remnants. That means for every 100 letters in your DNA, 8 were once part of something that did not belong. Something foreign that slipped past the gates and decided to stay. But what was once foreign is no longer alien. It is you. These ghosts have helped build your body. Some control how genes turn on and off, others protect against new infections. A few are still dangerous, still capable of waking up and causing harm. But most lie silent, like dust in the corners of a cathedral, sacred in their stillness. Let's drift now to a time before mammals, before fish, even before the first insects scuttled across land. In those ancient waters, retroviruses were already practicing their delicate invasion, slipping their RNA into the genomes of early animals, copying themselves quietly. They were persistent, they were patient, and they were everywhere. Over millions of years, these viral whispers became part of the evolutionary symphony. They nudged genomes in new directions, opened up possibilities, created shortcuts and surprises. When mutations occurred, it was often a viral fragment that took the hit, and sometimes that mutation was useful. A small shift, a change in shape, a new trait passed on, and so evolution learned to dance with ghosts. One of the most astonishing gifts of these ancient viruses is the placenta. In mammals, the placenta is the bridge between mother and child, a living connection that nourishes, protects, and communicates. And the gene that allows placenta cells to fuse into a protective barrier, it comes from a virus. A viral envelope protein, once used to enter cells, was repurposed by evolution to build a wall of love and defense. Without that viral code, the miracle of mammalian birth might never have existed. From danger came safety, from invasion, connection. Now imagine the genome as a great hall of mirrors. Some reflect light from the present, others reflect shadows from the past. As scientists explore this hall, they find more and more of these viral fragments, some intact, some broken, some rearranged into entirely new functions. They find viral promoters controlling gene expression, viral enhancers guiding development, viral switches flipping on at just the right time in early embryonic life. It is as if the genome, over billions of years, has learned not just to endure the virus, but to listen to it, to adapt it, to build with it, These ghost codes are not unique to humans. They exist in birds, in whales, in snakes, in grasses and trees. Every living thing carries a record of viral encounters, stitched into the very code of being. It is a kind of memory, but deeper than thought. It is molecular memory written not in neurons, but in nucleotides. A record of ancient battles and ancient collaborations. A history not of nations, but of sequences. And in this way, all life is connected, not just by descent, but by infection, by the shared experience of hosting and being changed by the virus. So when you breathe, when your heart beats, when your skin heals from a wound, you are not just living, you are echoing. You are the result of countless integrations, of stories told in code, of errors that became features, of ghosts that never left. And far from being haunted, you are made holy by it. The code that shapes your hands, your voice, your dreams, some of it is borrowed. Some of it was once a threat. And now it sings quietly within you, part of the music of life. As the day ends and the world grows still, know this, you are not alone. Inside you are the remnants of long-forgotten viruses, sleeping peacefully, watching, remembering. They do not harm, they do not judge, they simply remain. Silent witnesses to the long story of becoming, ghosts in the code of life. Now let us drift further into the spirals of the genome, into the layers of silence where ancient messages sleep, forgotten yet still intact. These viral remnants, long ago buried in the folds of DNA, are not scattered randomly. They rest in places of meaning, woven near genes that regulate life's most sacred rhythms. Some lie near switches that control the growth of limbs, the timing of development, the shape of thought. Like quiet watchers, they do not speak unless invited, but when they do, their voices ripple through the cell like the softest breeze turning pages in a book. In mice, scientists have removed some of these viral sequences, expecting little change, only to discover missing structures, vanished instincts, entire behaviours undone. What had seemed like junk was, in truth, scaffold. What had been discarded was in fact divine. In human embryos, certain viral genes awaken briefly, lighting up like lanterns in the dark. These awakenings are not errors, they are rehearsals. Some help guide the cells as they divide and differentiate, telling them when to become brain, when to become heart, when to stay silent. And just as suddenly, these viral lights dim again, their role complete. Like midwives in the shadows, they usher new life into form, then retreat. If one listens closely enough, not with ears but with understanding, one can hear the deep logic of it, the partnership between host and echo, between life and its oldest guests. The virus is not a mistake. It is a co-author. Scientists once dismissed these viral fragments as junk DNA, believing that only the genes coding for proteins were important. But time has humbled us. The so-called junk was not garbage, but a garden, wild, overgrown but filled with treasures, regulatory elements, enhancers, silencers, guides. Much of this garden was planted by viruses. Their sequences became platforms upon which evolution stood to build. Some viruses left behind tools for turning genes on in specific tissues, like the brain, the liver, or the immune system. Others influence the timing of gene expression, creating rhythms within the cell like tides responding to the moon. This viral legacy is not always gentle. Some remnants still have the power to awaken in unwanted ways. In certain cancers, viral fragments become reactivated, causing cells to grow without control. In autoimmune disorders, the immune system sometimes mistakes viral echoes for current threats, attacking the self. These are the darker tones in the symphony, the places where memory confuses present and past. But even here, the story is not one of blame. It is one of complexity. Life built its palace not from perfect bricks, but from broken ones, from risk, from trial, from mystery. Let us wander now to the immune system, that intricate network of cells and molecules designed to detect what does not belong. The immune system learned its vigilance through countless viral encounters. Some of its most powerful defenses, interferons, antigen-presenting cells, antibodies, arose in response to viral threats. But the immune system does more than defend. It remembers, it catalogues, it learns, and part of what it remembers are the viral shapes it has seen before, some encoded in the body's own DNA, passed down through generations like warnings in a dream. These inherited viral fragments act as internal teachers, helping the immune system train without danger, without harm. Like an artist sketching from memory, the immune system builds a picture of the world using shadows that are already inside. Even behavior may carry echoes of viral influence. In the human brain, certain genes derived from retroviruses are active during neural development, guiding the formation of synapses, influencing plasticity. They help shape how we learn, how we remember, how we perceive. Some researchers believe that our very capacity for language and abstract thought may have been nudged forward by viral insertions, by the structural innovations they brought to our brains. If this is true, then we do not simply carry the virus, we speak it, we think in its rhythms, we dream in its code. In moments of great evolutionary change, when species shifted suddenly or new forms emerged, viral activity often increased. These bursts of viral influence may have accelerated adaptation, shaking the genome like a tree and allowing new branches to grow. It is as if viruses, once inside, became instruments of chaos and creativity, reminding life that change is the only constant. Some sequences from ancient retroviruses have been found to cluster around genes involved in reproduction, growth, and immunity, suggesting that viruses had a hand in shaping not only how we survive, but how we reproduce, how we love, how we build the future. There is a tenderness to this idea that something once feared and fought could become a guide, that even the code of a virus born in selfish replication could be repurposed into something generous, a defense, a blueprint, a bridge. It asks us to reconsider what it means to be part of life, not merely to be composed of cells and organs, but to be made from stories, layered, intertwined, revised. And among those stories are the ghosts of viruses, once strangers, now scribes. Look again at the double helix, that graceful spiral of genetic code. Within its curves lie poems that have no author, patterns that have no clear beginning. Some sequences repeat like lullabies, others appear only once like a single note in a symphony. The viral echoes are both persistent and unique. They remind us that life is not a perfect design, but a living draft, always revising, always incorporating, always becoming. And so we find ourselves not as hosts to invaders, but as heirs to ancient conversations. Our DNA is not a monologue, but a dialogue between past and present, between self and other, between what once was and what now is. The ghosts in the code of life do not haunt, they illuminate. They offer us a different way to understand who we are. Not isolated but connected, not pure but full of history, not static but endlessly changing. You are not only your blood, your name, your choices, you are also your viruses, those silent pieces that once wandered in from the outside and chose to stay. They do not speak loudly, but if you listen in stillness, in wonder, you might hear them whisper, "You are not alone, you never were." Let us settle now into the soft ending of this story, where what was once feared becomes familiar, and what was once foreign becomes family. Deep within your cells, the ghosts in the code still sleep, not in fear or gens, but in calm companionship. These viral fragments, these molecular relics of ancient invasions, have lost their hunger. They are not here to replicate wildly or break down walls. They are here because they stayed, because life in its strange and beautiful wisdom made room for them. And in that room, something unexpected grew. Cooperation, complexity, connection. What began as a whisper from an outsider became part of the voice you now call your own. Some of these fragments are still active, but not in ways that cause chaos. They are the soft pulse beneath the surface, regulating genes, guiding development, helping the body recognize what belongs and what does not. Others remain dormant, like stars hidden by daylight, visible only when the world tilts just right. And a few, even now, still hold secrets. Sequences we do not yet understand, functions not yet discovered, potential waiting to unfold. The human genome is not finished. It is not fixed. It is a living document shaped by time and memory, by accident and need. And viruses have been among its most persistent editors. There are moments when the ghosts stir, in illness, in aging, in moments of extreme stress. Sometimes they awaken not to harm, but to help. In certain wounds, viral fragments activate genes that help the tissue repair. In the brain, some guide the birth of new neurons. In the womb, they shape the earliest rhythms of life. These are not errors, they are echoes. They remind us that the body is not built only from survival, but from adaptation, from trust, from the ability to take in what was once dangerous and make it useful. That is a kind of alchemy, a soft biological grace. Outside the world of human life, the same story continues. In trees and birds, in mushrooms and whales, viral fragments shape the dance of genes. In the soil, ancient viral code moves between bacteria like a shared language, allowing them to learn, to change, to resist. In oceans, viruses drift with the tides, turning over the microbial world, setting the tempo of ecosystems. They are not invaders here, but conductors. They do not break the symphony, they guide it. Even the sun, in touching the ocean, helps trigger viral cycles, a partnership between star and sea, light and code. And when scientists explore these hidden histories, when they map the genome and find sequences that once came from viruses, they are not merely finding data, they are uncovering stories, whole timelines of infection and memory. They are finding out how the eye evolved, how the brain grew complex, how certain species branched into new forms. They are discovering that life did not grow in spite of viruses, but with them. That the virus is not the villain of the story, but the question that made the answer possible. So what does this mean for us, here and now, lying in stillness, wrapped in breath and wonder. It means we are not separate from the world, not untouched by its oldest rhythms. It means our very identity is shaped by what once tried to change us. And instead of rejecting those changes, life embraced them, folded them in, made them part of the self. It is a quiet kind of courage to carry your history not with shame but with openness, to let even the smallest fragment become something beautiful. Somewhere in a laboratory, a researcher is reading a strand of DNA, following a trail that winds through time. They stop at a sequence, a viral echo silent for millions of years, and wonder what it once did, and what it might still do. In a hospital, a newborn's cells are lighting up with ancient genes. Some from the father, and some from viruses that lived and died before either were born. Your body, those same echoes pulse gently, part of your healing, your thinking, your being. You are a mosaic, not just of your parents, but of ancestors too small to see, too old to name, too humble to be remembered, except in code. And that code is not broken, it is not impure, it is a testament to the resilience of life, to its willingness to listen, to its genius for making use of everything, even the virus, especially the virus. For without the ghost, the song would be incomplete. Without the echo, the code would be thinner. The ghosts in the code remind us that even what enters us in conflict can become part of our peace. So let us end not with fear, but with gratitude. For the unseen guests who helped us grow, for the silent stowaways who reshaped our destiny, for the tiny threads of former threats that now hold parts of us together. Let us honour the viral fragments not as enemies, but as old companions on the long walk of life. For in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every moment of thought, they are there, still present, still peaceful, still part of the code. Close your eyes and feel that code humming softly beneath your skin. It is older than memory, older than words, and somewhere in that hum, in that silence, in that breath, the ghosts are listening too. Not to frighten, but to remember. Not to haunt, but to belong. In the quiet oceans of Earth's earliest hours, before leaves unfolded or eyes ever blinked, the world was a stillness filled with potential. Everything that lived drifted alone. Simple cells moved gently through mineral-rich waters, each enclosed in its fragile shell, each carrying a tiny spark of self. They were ancient, soft and silent, separated by the endless space of the sea. They had no nerves, no thoughts, no tongues with which to speak. But something was stirring, an invisible longing to connect. And so, long before words or songs or language, the first whispers began. These whispers were not sound, but molecules, drifting from one cell to another, carrying simple messages like "I am here" and "this is safe" and "come closer." In this way, communication began, not as speech, but as chemistry, not as a voice, but as a presence. At the time, life was a lonely experiment. Bacteria ruled the world, each one complete in itself, each one dividing and surviving with no need for others. But somewhere along the shorelines and thermal vents, the first signals were sent. These were not shouts, but gentle releases of molecules, pheromones, ions, little fragments of intention. A cell would release a signal, and if another cell nearby recognized it, a change would happen, a shift in movement, a readiness to divide, a pause in activity. These changes were tiny, but they were enough. The cells were beginning to notice each other. They were beginning to listen. This was the earliest communication, not forced, not planned, but simply arising from the chemistry of being alive. As time moved on, the language of cells grew more complex. Bacteria began to sense how many others were nearby, a skill we now call quorum sensing. When enough bacteria gathered in one place, they would change their behavior together. They would glow, or move, or build. It was like a meeting without words, like a gathering of fireflies all deciding at once to light up the night. Each cell was still alone, but the signals they sent allowed them to act as one. This was the first murmur of cooperation, the first sign that life, while born in solitude, longed for harmony. Now imagine a tide pool, warm and shallow, lit by the slanting light of an early sun. In it float thousands of tiny cells, each whispering, each listening. Some signals are warnings, danger, some are invitations, let's work together. Others are instructions, build this, and slowly, over many generations, the cells begin to organize. They form films, clusters, colonies. They begin to specialize. Some focus on protection, others on feeding. Some grow still and supportive while others remain mobile. This at last is multicellularity, life deciding that it is better sometimes not to be alone. The whispering of cells was never loud, never harsh. It was subtle, like wind through leaves, like ripples in a pond. And it came in many forms. Some cells used chemical trails to guide their neighbours. Others released proteins or lipids or even fragments of their own DNA. Over time, these messages became more specific. A cell could tell not just that others were near, but who they were and what they were doing. This opened a new world of possibility. Now, cells could work as teams. They could build tissues, organs, bodies. They could grow into creatures that walked, swam, and eventually wandered. One of the most astonishing aspects of this silent language is that it still lives within you. Your body, complex, vast, and ever-changing, is made of trillions of cells, all talking quietly all the time. Your immune cells send signals to identify invaders. Your neurons whisper with electricity and molecules across tiny gaps. Your hormones drift through your blood, carrying messages of hunger, sleep, love, and fear. Even your skin cells communicate when wounded, calling others to come and heal. Every breath you take is coordinated by this symphony of whispers. Every movement, every thought, every dream begins in a conversation between cells. In early embryos, this cellular language is everything. A single fertilized egg begins to divide, and as it does, the daughter cells begin to send messages. Some say, become skin, others say, become bone, still others say, stay silent for now. This is not random. It is a dance choreographed by molecules, by proteins that bind, by genes that awaken and sleep, by gradients of chemicals that guide where a cell should go, and all of it happens without noise, without thought, without mistake. The whispers of cells build entire beings, again and again, without fanfare, without applause. Even today, researchers are uncovering new forms of this hidden dialogue. Cells communicate not only through proteins and hormones, but through tiny packages called exosomes, little envelopes of information sent from one cell to another. These packages carry RNA, lipids, and even tiny proteins, allowing cells to influence each other over great distances. Some believe these messages could one day help us heal from disease, regrow damaged tissue, or even slow aging. We are only beginning to understand the language our bodies have been speaking all along. And in the brain, the most delicate and complex of all cellular conversations takes place. Neurons, glial cells, and blood vessels exchange signals every second, guiding thought, emotion, memory. The brain is not a single organ, it is a society of cells, each playing its role, each whispering to the others, each listening in turn. There are no leaders here, only balance, only flow, only the endless dance of messages sent and received. So we return to that early world where cells first learned to whisper. They did not shout, they did not conquer, they simply noticed each other. They sent signals, they listened. And from that listening came everything. The forests, the oceans, the wings of birds, the curve of a smile, the song of a whale, the beat of a heart. All of it born from molecules in motion, all of it built on whispers. You're not made of silence, you're made of conversation. You're not alone, even in stillness. Inside you, the whispering continues. Every cell, every second, sending its gentle message. Here I am part of you. Let us build something beautiful. Now, let us sink further into that ancient stillness, where cells began to move not just with instinct, but with awareness, not just for survival, but for unity. The language they spoke, chemical, electric, molecular, deepened in complexity with every passing age. In the shadows of early multicellular life, there came not only the whisper of presence, but the shaping of purpose. Cells began to coordinate, not just react. They began to sense not only their neighbours, but the needs of the whole. This was the beginning of tissue, of form, of function. One cell in isolation could divide and drift, but together, listening, responding, adapting, they became something greater, a body, a self, a being made of many whispers speaking as one. The early organisms were little more than floating sacs, sponges, jellies, worms, but they held within them a profound truth. Communication creates complexity. Cells on the outside took in nutrients, while others on the inside specialized in digestion or repair. Some became sensors, others became scaffolds. None could do it alone. Through slow evolution, cell types diversified, each one fine-tuned to a particular task, and their conversations became the threads holding the whole together. And so what began as chemical murmurs in the sea became a chorus of molecular voices, each one precise, each one necessary. Consider now the nervous system, that shimmering network of lightning and memory. Its birth began with cells that could transmit tiny jolts of electricity faster than chemicals could drift. These cells, early neurons, were pioneers of speed, but even they could not work alone. They had to connect, to pass their charges on to others, to build chains of response. And to guide their signals, they invented synapses, exquisite gaps bridged by neurotransmitters. Each gap a conversation, each transmission a decision. Over time, these networks grew more intricate, branching like trees, folding like thoughts. In this way, the nervous system arose, not from a command center, but from countless cells learning how to speak more clearly, more rapidly, more beautifully. But not all communication is fast. Some messages are meant to drift slowly, to ripple through the body like tides. These are the hormones, messages sent through blood, bathing tissues with intent. They regulate growth, hunger, sleep, love, and aging. From the tiny pineal gland that releases melatonin under moonlight to the adrenal glands that prepare us for flight or fight, these whispers are ancient and wise. A single hormone can influence hundreds of genes change the shape of organs, shift the course of a life, and yet they act in stillness, without sound, without urgency. Just a message, just a signal, just one cell telling another, the time has come. Even the immune system, which we often imagine as a battlefield, is built on messages. Cells scan for signs of trouble. They release cytokines, chemical words that summon help, calm panic, trigger fever, or end an attack. White blood cells drift like sentinels waiting to be called. T cells remember past invasions and share that memory with others. The whole system is less a war than a council, a network of alerts and balances, of decisions made in quiet, with wisdom written in molecules. When it falters, the body feels chaos, but when it works, the body feels whole. In the embryo, the language of cells is a sacred script. As the first cells divide, they begin assigning meaning to space. This side will become the front, this part the heart, this one the spine. They send gradients of signal, not in words but in molecules that create invisible maps. Cells near the source of one signal become one thing. Those farther away become something else. It is a symphony without conductor, a dance choreographed by proximity, timing and gentle exchange. Some cells even sacrifice themselves, knowing their death is required for the shape of the body to form. A quiet, noble surrender, guided by chemical cue. That too is communication. That too is love. In plants too, the whispers continue. Roots sense gravity, water and neighbours, passing signals between cells through thin channels called plasmodesmata. Leaves detect light and shade, sending instructions to stretch, to turn, to grow. Some trees under attack by insects release warning chemicals into the air, messages carried by wind, received by others who then prepare their defences. Even without a nervous system, plants are constantly in dialogue, with themselves, with each other, with the soil, with the sky. Their language is not ours, but it is deep and old and true. And then there are the tiny messengers, the exosomes and microRNAs, the pieces of code passed silently from one cell to another. They float through the blood, through the lymph, through the breath. Some are signals of health, others are cries for help. Some may carry memories from past trauma. Others may influence mood, aging, even thought. This is the frontier science is only beginning to understand, that cells not only whisper but remember, that the body may store not just chemicals but experience, and that healing may require not only medicine but listening. It is humbling to realize that every movement of your hand, every blink of your eye, every thought that flickers in your mind is made possible by this endless, invisible communication. Not by force, but by conversation. Not by control, but by consent. Your cells are not commanded, they are persuaded, they are reminded, they are taught. And in return they teach, they remind, they respond. It is a system built not on hierarchy but on harmony. So much of life depends not on speaking loudly, but on listening deeply. The earliest cells knew this. The cells in your body know it still. They do not scream, they do not argue. They simply send their messages again and again with faith that someone will receive them. And when that happens, when a signal is sent and heard and acted upon, life moves forward. A wound closes, a thought is born, a child grows, a flower opens. This is how life sustains itself. Through countless whispers passed from cell to cell, generation to generation, species to species. Through quiet messages that carry the weight of being. through languages without letters, through codes without names, through the art of saying just enough. You are made of this. You are not merely a body, you are a chorus, a collection of tiny voices, each speaking its truth, each listening in return. The harmony they create is what you feel as health, as thought, as love, as life. And now, as we come to rest in the gentle ending of this story, imagine once more the quiet miracle that surrounds you, the one you carry within every breath, every blink, every heartbeat. Your body, so familiar, so personal, is not a single thing. It is a community, a collective, a living democracy of cells, each one contributing its quiet part, each one listening and responding to the countless messages flowing around it. You're not a monologue, you are a conversation. And that conversation began billions of years ago, when cells first learned to whisper across the emptiness of the sea. In that earliest moment there was no plan, no destiny, no design beyond survival, but something else emerged alongside survival, a kind of yearning, not conscious, not intentional, but deeply real, a yearning for connection. And with that came the first signal, the first molecule sent outward with no guarantee of return. That simple act of reaching beyond oneself changed everything. It allowed cells to align, to cooperate, to become more than they were alone. It laid the foundation for every body, every mind, every dream that would ever rise from the ocean's edge. Today, those whispers have become a symphony. They govern the rhythm of your heart, the growth of your bones, the recovery of your wounds. They shape your emotions, your immune responses, your very sense of time. Cortisol rises in the morning, telling your body it is time to awaken. Melatonin drifts in as night falls, whispering that it is time to rest. Insulin responds to the sweetness in your blood. Oxytocin rises in moments of love and trust. Every hormone, every neurotransmitter, every ion channel and signal cascade is a thread in this endless, unbroken web of communication. And all of it happens without your knowing, beneath your awareness, like the wind through leaves, like the tide beneath a sleeping boat. Even when you are still, your cells are speaking. Even when you feel alone, they are not. They are working, healing, learning. When you are wounded, they rally to your side. When you are afraid, they prepare you to act. When you are at peace, they hum softly in alignment. And when you dream, they continue their dialogue, sustaining the architecture of your being so that upon waking, you can move once more through the world. There is beauty in this, in knowing that your existence is made not by command, but by cooperation. That health is not the absence of illness, but the presence of harmony. That healing is not a battle to be won, but a song to be remembered. A returning to the rhythm that began when cells first began to whisper. And this whispering does not end at the edge of your skin. It moves beyond, into the world, into the spaces between people. Our bodies speak to each other without words, through scent, through presence, through energy. A mother and her child before language communicate in touch and gaze and warmth. Two lovers synchronize their heartbeats just by lying close. A community shares emotional states through tone of voice, through gesture, through a kind of resonance that science is only beginning to measure. These two are whispers. These two are cellular symphonies rising into the world of feeling and connection. We are made to listen. We are made to respond. The same skills that shaped multicellular life shape our relationships, our empathy, our understanding. And when something breaks in the body or the soul, it is often because the communication has faltered. A signal was missed, a message was misread, a voice went unheard. Healing then is not just fixing, it is listening again. It is remembering how to whisper. In the vast quiet of space, the earth itself might seem like a whisper, a small blue message drifting through the cosmos. And yet, on this little planet, a miracle is unfolding each moment. Trillions of cells, exchanging meaning, sustaining consciousness, composing the music of life. Your breath, your thoughts, your memories, all of them are made of these ancient, wordless conversations. The same ones that began before lungs, before brains, before time as we know it. Let yourself rest in that. Let yourself soften into the knowing that you are not alone, that even now your body speaks, your cells are listening to each other, your organs are coordinating, your immune system is remembering. Your brain is processing signals not just from the world but from within. You are held together by attention. You're sustained by collaboration. You're a miracle of ongoing dialogue. The story of life is not written in shouts, but in whispers. Not in force, but in invitation. Not in isolation, but in interdependence. It is a story told by cells who learned long ago that the way forward was not to conquer, but to connect. And so tonight, as you lay your head down and your breathing slows, know that inside you, the whispering continues, soft as moonlight, steady as waves, ancient as stars. Each message says the same thing again and again, in a language older than words. I am here. You are whole. Let us live. Long before the rise of predators and prey, before forests rustled or wings first beat against the sky, the earth was home to an invisible game. One played not with weapons, but with mimicry, illusion, and cunning. This game was not invented by thought or driven by intent, but emerged quietly through the slow poetry of evolution. It began when the simplest forms of life learned the oldest trick in nature: to pretend, to blend, to deceive, not with malice but with need. To live sometimes one must not be seen, and so in a world without eyes, in a time before predators had even risen, some of the earliest creatures began to copy the language of others. Not through sound, but through form, colour, chemistry and scent. This was not the mimicry of actors on a stage. This was mimicry born in molecules, in survival, in the soft pull between being hunted and being overlooked. Picture now a simple bacterium floating in warm, shallow water. It has no eyes, no voice, no armour. But around it swims something larger, hungrier, a predator of cells. In desperation, the bacterium shifts. It alters its surface, changes its chemistry, makes itself appear not dangerous but uninteresting, or even worse, like something the predator cannot eat. Over time, this trick works. The predator passes by, the mimic lives. And slowly across countless generations that shift becomes encoded. The ability to pretend becomes part of the mimic's inheritance. And so deception enters the code of life, not as evil, but as elegance. As multicellular life evolved and the eyes of predators sharpened, mimicry grew more intricate. Insects began to imitate twigs and leaves. Snakes mimicked the colours of more venomous cousins. Fish copied the shimmer of other species to hide in their schools. The game had become layered, dynamic, beautiful. It was not just camouflage, it was transformation. and all of it guided by the pressures of evolution, by the simple rule, what survives, stays. The trick did not have to be perfect, it only had to work well enough. A butterfly that almost looks like a dead leaf escapes just one more bird. A harmless wasp mimic gets spared by a cautious predator. And in this way, nature sharpened its tools of disguise. Even now, in the forests and oceans and fields of Earth, this dance continues. An orchid evolves petals that resemble a female insect, luring in pollinators. A harmless king snake copies the red, black, and yellow bands of a venomous coral snake. A moth wears eye spots on its wings to startle attackers. A bird fakes injury to lure threats away from its nest. These are not conscious lies. These are inherited performances, the result of generations shaped by who could fool and who could see through the fooling. But mimicry is not always visual. Some creatures mimic sound, like the lyrebird, who can echo chainsaws, car alarms, and other bird calls with eerie precision. Others mimic scent. Certain orchids emit the exact chemical signature of female bees to trick males into pollination. Still others mimic behavior. The aggressive mimic, a type of anglerfish, uses a worm-like lure to draw prey into its mouth. In every corner of nature, trickery is not the exception. It is the rule. Life learns to pretend, not to manipulate, but to survive. The world is full of honest lies. Even humans in our cells carry echoes of this trick. The immune system is built to recognize what belongs and what does not. But some pathogens have learned to mimic our own molecules, slipping past defenses by wearing familiar masks. Viruses wrap themselves in pieces of host membrane. Bacteria modify their surface proteins to appear as harmless as the body's own tissues. Cancer cells sometimes suppress the very signals that would reveal them. These are not acts of villainy. They are strategies of survival. They are nature's oldest language, adapt or perish. And mimicry does not only protect, sometimes it seduces. Fireflies of certain species mimic the flashes of others, not to mate but to lure and consume. The deception is fatal, but the mimic survives. There is a haunting elegance in this. The ability to imitate can be used to save or to destroy. It depends not on the intent, for nature has no intent, but on the shape of need. What works remains, what fails fades. At the microscopic level, mimicry becomes even more profound. Certain viruses mimic human proteins so well that they not only evade the immune system but influence how cells behave. They can manipulate the host's signaling pathways, change gene expression, silence alarms. This mimicry is not visual or audible, it is molecular. It is a ghostly echo of the host's own self, and it reminds us that the line between self and other is thinner than we imagine. Look closely at the animal kingdom and you will see examples of mimicry not only across species, but between kingdoms. A fungus that makes an insect climb to a high place before erupting, releasing spores. A parasite that changes a rat's brain chemistry so it no longer fears cats. A virus that makes caterpillars climb and dissolve. These are not horrors, they are strategies. Life learning, always how to use the patterns around it. Life shaping life. Now imagine a world where nothing could pretend, where every creature appeared only as itself. It would be simpler, yes, but more dangerous. Without mimicry, many would die. Without the ability to copy, to echo, to hide, evolution would slow. So we come to understand that the oldest trick in nature is not deception in the way we think of it. It is adaptation. It is the folding of form into illusion for the sake of continuation. In the end, mimicry is not betrayal. It is survival's poetry. It is how the weak borrow strength, how the still become unseen, how the vulnerable wear the mask of the dangerous. It is not cruelty, it is creativity. It is the world speaking in riddles, not to confuse but to endure. So the next time you see a leaf that flutters and flies, or a flower that hums with bee scent, or a snake that wears another's warning, pause. You're witnessing not just a clever trick, but a story older than speech. A story written in genes, shaped by time, refined by the necessity of staying alive. And beneath all of it, one quiet truth. Sometimes to survive, we must become what we are not, just long enough to remain what we are. Let us now journey deeper into this quiet, clever realm, where imitation becomes evolution's art form, and the world is shaped by what is seen, and what is only made to look seen. In nature, mimicry does not always protect only the weak. Sometimes the powerful pretend to be powerless, sometimes predators wear the face of innocence. The lines are never clean. Consider the anglerfish, who lures prey with a glowing appendage that mimics the light of drifting plankton. Small fish, drawn by the promise of safety or food, swim toward the glow, only to be devoured. The deception is complete. It is not defense. It is offense wrapped in illusion. The mimicry here is not a shield, but a spear dressed as silk. Elsewhere, a spider mimics the scent of its favourite prey to sneak into its web and feed without setting off alarms. Certain snakes, though venomous in their own right, adopt the colouring of even deadlier species, doubling the fear they inspire. And birds too, like the drongo, mimic alarm calls of other animals to scare them away and steal their food. These are not errors in evolution. They are strategies, each one polished by time, not in morality, but in outcome. In the natural world, survival is not about justice, it is about what works, what blends, what remains. And not all mimicry is about danger. Some is about opportunity. In a forest, a vine learns to match the leaves of the tree it climbs, reducing its chance of being eaten. In the ocean, cuttlefish and octopuses change colour and texture in an instant, matching rocks and coral to become part of the scenery. They do not copy one form forever. They adapt constantly, to light, to texture, to motion. This is mimicry not as costume but as conversation. The cephalopod listens to its surroundings and replies with its skin. It becomes the world around it, moment by moment, like a living mirror of its environment. In the microbial world, mimicry reaches a scale of sophistication almost beyond comprehension. Some bacteria evolve molecules that resemble those produced by the host's own cells, manipulating the immune response, suppressing defenses, or sneaking through barriers. This biochemical trickery is subtle, invisible, powerful. The body cannot fight what it cannot recognize, and so sometimes it simply lets the invader in. This is not because the pathogen is invisible, but because it wears a mask crafted from the host itself. Even within the brain, mimicry plays its part. Certain parasites can alter the behaviour of their hosts in eerie ways. Toxoplasma gondii, for instance, can change a rodent's fear response, making it attracted to the scent of cats, the very predator that will consume it. The parasite completes its life cycle in the feline gut, and so it rewrites the behaviour of another species to return home. This is not mind control as we imagine it. It is molecular mimicry, hormones and neurotransmitters being nudged and twisted until instinct becomes invitation. It is not fiction. It is biology at its most haunting. And yet mimicry is not just a predator's tool, it also creates alliances. Consider the mutual mimicry found in Müllerian mimicry, where multiple harmful species evolve to resemble each other, reinforcing a shared warning to predators. Bees and wasps share black and yellow stripes. Toxic frogs wear the same bright colours across regions. Their similarity strengthens the signal, leave us alone. In this way, mimicry becomes a community's defence, a biological pact to share the cost of survival. It is cooperation born from imitation. In the world of plants, mimicry can even cross species barriers. Some orchids, for example, do not just mimic insects visually, they mimic their behaviour, scent and texture, luring in pollinators without offering nectar. These deceptions are not accidents. They are carefully shaped by selection, passed on because they succeed, repeated because they work. And the pollinators in turn evolve sharper senses, better discernment. The mimic and the mimicked are locked in a silent arms race of perception and disguise. But what happens when the mimic becomes more convincing than the original? What happens when the copy is so refined that it begins to replace the model? In some ecosystems, mimics outnumber their models, a phenomenon known as Batesian overload. When predators learn that most warning-coloured prey are harmless mimics, they begin to ignore the signal, putting the model species at greater risk. Thus, mimicry, if too successful, can collapse the very illusion it depends on. It is a fragile magic sustained by balance. Humans too carry mimicry in our bones. Our cells mimic early embryonic states when repairing tissue. Our immune system sometimes learns to tolerate foreign substances because they resemble self. Even in the social realm, we mimic without thought, mirroring body language, adopting speech patterns, resonating with the emotions of those around us. We are drawn to those who reflect us, even subtly. This is not deception, it is connection. It is the same ancient impulse to survive through sameness. Science itself mimics nature, borrowing its strategies, its designs. Biomimicry, the study of nature's patterns to solve human problems, has led to innovations in engineering, medicine, and materials. Velcro from burrs, airplane wings from birds, self-cleaning surfaces from lotus leaves. Nature's tricks become our tools. Evolution's experiments become our inspiration. So we return again to that central idea, that mimicry is not a mistake, not an aberration, but a foundation. The world thrives on illusion, on resemblance, on replication. Evolution does not reward truth, it rewards function. If the lie saves a life, it becomes truth over time. If the mask fits the moment, it becomes part of the face. And yet there is something deeply honest in this deception. The mimic is not pretending for pride, it is pretending for life. Mimicry is the answer to a question whispered by time itself. How do I remain when the world changes? And the answer, whispered back across ages, is simple. Become what you must. Bend your edges. Borrow safety. Echo what works. This is the oldest trick in nature, and it is not cruel. It is beautiful. It is life remembering how to live. Now let us follow this thread of mimicry to its quiet conclusion, where the oldest trick in nature becomes more than a strategy. It becomes a story written across all life, from the smallest bacterium to the most intricate mind. As the world evolved, mimicry did not remain a single trick used in single moments. It became layered, recursive, meaning Life not only learned how to pretend, but how to recognize the pretend, how to mimic the mimics, how to refine the masks. In this way, mimicry deepened into something almost like intelligence, yet older than thought, older than the brain. It became pattern-seeking, pattern-following, pattern-refining, an art of being shaped by perception itself, and what began as survival turned into something else, elegance. Somewhere in the depths of the rainforest, a butterfly lands silently on the bark of a tree. It does not think about its colours, its patterns, but they are perfect, the same texture as the moss, the same hues as the shadows. A predator passes by unaware, and the butterfly lives. That same predator has learned over time to look more closely. It has begun to doubt what it sees. Its eyes sharpen, its mind narrows. It evolves too. Thus mimicry, born from need, fuels a cascade of adaptations, sharpening both deceiver and seeker in tandem. This is the hidden dialogue of evolution. Not only who can fake, but who can see through the fake. In a tide pool, an octopus changes shape and colour not only to hide, but to distract. It mimics venomous lionfish, flatfish, even sea snakes depending on its situation. It is not acting blindly, it is observing. And in that observation lies a kind of decision, a momentary choice, what to become. The mimic does not become everything at once. It selects, it responds, it blends not randomly but specifically. This is not just camouflage, this is intelligence without thought, memory without mind, and yet it works. We begin to see that mimicry is not only a defense or a deception, but a way of participating in the world. It is how one thing becomes part of another's context. It is how the self becomes a reflection of the surroundings, and this too is beautiful. Life, in its many forms, does not insist on remaining separate. It listens, it adapts, it changes its surface to match the air, the light, the moment. What is this, if not empathy at the molecular level? And still we see mimicry in motion not just in biology, but in behaviour, in society, in culture. A school of fish moves as one because each member mirrors the others. A murmuration of starlings turns in mid-air, each bird responding to its neighbours. No leader, just a collective imitation. This is safety, yes, but also art. The shapes formed in the sky, the fluid harmony of the group, they are not commanded. They are born from response. Each bird becomes the movement of the others. Each fish is part of a greater body. Mimicry becomes motion. Motion becomes meaning. In the human world, this principle continues. Language is learned by imitation. Babies mirror facial expressions, learning joy, surprise, sadness. Children copy the tone of voice, the rhythm of speech. We learn not just through instruction, but through reflection, through watching and trying. Even our laughter is contagious. Yawns too. Our neurons contain mirror cells, tiny biological circuits that light up not when we act, but when we observe others acting. We are wired to echo, to resonate, to become, and so mimicry moves from biology to emotion, from survival to identity. It shapes not just our bodies, but our relationships, the way we learn love, the way we build trust. We imitate those we admire. We mirror those we hope to connect with. It is not manipulation, it is how we belong. It is how we signal safety, sameness, empathy. The same trick that kept ancient insects alive now helps humans feel seen. But mimicry also asks questions. Where does the self end and the imitation begin? If we adapt too much, do we lose ourselves? If we wear too many masks, do we forget our own face? These are not questions evolution can answer, but they are important, because mimicry is powerful, and power without reflection can blur into confusion. The mimic that survives also risks becoming only what is expected, yet perhaps that too is part of the dance. To wear the mask long enough to live, and then, when safe, to remove it. In the dance of life, mimicry is the choreography no one sees, but everyone follows. It is how the weak outwit the strong, how the shy slip past the bold, how life continues in corners where it should not. And it reminds us that survival does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it paints itself to match the wall, sometimes it becomes something it is not, so that it can go on being what it is. Now, as you lie still and let this story settle into your breath, remember, there are creatures out there right now pretending to be leaves, pretending to be stone, pretending to be someone else, not to deceive out of cruelty, but to exist. And you too have done this, in moments of fear, in moments of love, in childhood, in growth, in healing. You've mimicked what you needed to become, sometimes to protect yourself, sometimes to find others, sometimes to learn. And that is not false. That is not weakness. That is the oldest truth in nature, the oldest trick, the quiet inheritance of life, to survive, to learn, to change, to echo, not because it is dishonest, but because it is necessary. Because sometimes the path to becoming begins with becoming something else. And from that, slowly, gently, the self emerges, stronger, wiser, whole. So sleep now, wrapped not just in blankets, but in the long memory of evolution. The leaf that flies, the shadow that bites, the child who copies, the bird that echoes, the trick that protects, the whisper that saves. And know that to mimic is not to betray who you are, it is to find your way back to it, one gentle disguise at a time. Long before vertebrates crawled from the sea, before wings unfolded beneath sky or petals bloomed in sunlight, the invisible architects were already at work. They did not build with stone or steel, did not carve with tools or design with blueprints, yet they shaped the very course of life itself. They had no hands, no thoughts, no purpose in the way we understand it, and yet their influence has touched every creature, every cell, every step that life has taken from the deep to the surface. These architects were viruses, silent, tireless, unseen. They drifted through the early oceans like seeds on the wind, entering cells not with malice but with method, copying, rewriting, staying. They left behind fragments of code, whispers in DNA, gentle edits in the blueprint of becoming. They were not alive in the way we define life, and yet life would not be what it is without them. Imagine now the Earth in its earliest chapters, warm, damp, and bubbling with simple life. Bacteria ruled the seas, each one a small packet of purpose, dividing endlessly, surviving storms and sunlight. Into this world drifted the first viral particles, not predators in the classic sense, but messengers of chaos and change. When they entered a cell, they didn't just destroy, they merged, they inserted, they altered, and in doing so they became part of the host. Some killed, some helped, some remained quietly, neither causing harm nor offering aid. But all of them changed the story. This invisible editing began to build complexity. Over time, viral genes became embedded in the genomes of their hosts. Some of those genes turned out to be useful, enhancing resistance, speeding replication, guiding immune defenses. others created entirely new traits. In fact, many of the great leaps in evolutionary history and the rise of multicellular organisms, the development of the placenta, even the formation of the adaptive immune system show signs of viral fingerprints. These shifts did not happen through slow mutation alone. They happened because viruses were there, writing and rewriting, forcing new combinations, new possibilities. Consider the placenta, that extraordinary organ which allows mammals to nourish their young within the womb. One of the most important genes involved in its development, syncytin, comes not from any ancient mammal ancestor, but from a retrovirus. It is a viral envelope protein, repurposed by evolution to fuse cells and form the protective barrier around the growing embryo. Without it, live birth in its current form would not exist. This is not merely a coincidence, it is architecture. Viral architecture. A piece of code that once served to infect now serves to protect. A fragment of threat transformed into a foundation of love. Elsewhere in the genome, viral elements act like switches, turning genes on or off depending on context. They regulate immune responses, guide embryonic development, even influence the timing of puberty and aging. These aren't active infections, they're remnants, fossils of old viral invasions that were folded into the genome and kept because they were useful. Nearly half the human genome shows traces of viral origin. That is not an error. That is a collaboration. And viruses do more than alter the code of life. They shape the ecosystem itself. In oceans, viruses control the population of phytoplankton, which produce much of the oxygen we breathe. By infecting and bursting these tiny organisms, viruses release nutrients that feed other marine life, maintaining the balance of the entire oceanic food web. They are, in a sense, gardeners of the sea, pruning life not with scissors but with infection. It is not cruelty. It is the cycling of energy, the quiet balance of life and death that allows all things to continue. In soil, viruses influence the microbial community beneath our feet, affecting how nutrients move through the ground, how plants grow, how ecosystems stabilize after change. They are present in forests, in deserts, in the deepest caves, and they're inside you. Not just as threats, but as cohabitants. Some of the viruses in your body are beneficial. They keep harmful bacteria in check, they stimulate your immune system, they occupy niches that might otherwise be claimed by pathogens. They are not enemies, they are old neighbours. Even in the brain, viral remnants have been found influencing the expression of genes linked to memory, emotion, and cognition. This does not mean viruses control our thoughts, but it does suggest they have helped build the structures that make thought possible. They have helped guide the development of neural networks, the formation of synapses, the timing of gene expression that shapes how neurons connect and communicate. Without them, the mind might not have taken the shape it did. Your ability to wonder, to feel, to dream, it is not solely your own. It is shared with these silent architects, these fragments of ancient infection now repurposed into meaning, and yet despite all they've given, we have learned to fear them. When a new virus spreads, we panic, we isolate, we search for cures, and that fear is not without cause. Some viruses do bring suffering, loss, upheaval. They remind us that even ancient relationships can turn unpredictable, but even in crisis, there is learning. The immune system strengthens, new treatments emerge, communities adapt, and the viral genome, once feared, becomes a tool for healing. We use viral vectors in gene therapy. We harness them in vaccines. We engineer them to fight cancer. The enemy becomes the ally. In this way, viruses continue to shape us, not just biologically, but culturally, scientifically, emotionally. They force us to look inward, to understand the boundaries of self and other. They challenge our definitions of life. They blur the lines between organism and parasite, between harm and help. And in doing so, they invite us to reconsider the architecture of being, not as a rigid design, but as a mosaic built through endless, invisible collaboration. So when you close your eyes and imagine evolution, do not picture only bones and beaks, claws and spines. Picture also the virus, small silent driftings entering a cell and leaving behind a message, a line of code, a nudge, a whisper. It will not be noticed right away, but in time it will help build something new, something unexpected, a feather, a thought, a heartbeat. The virus does not create life, but it changes the path life takes. That is what makes it an architect, not of walls or towers, but of possibility. It sketches in shadow, it draws in silence, it builds not by adding but by altering. And in every genome, in every breath, in every step forward life has ever taken, its fingerprint remains. Now let us drift further into the architecture itself, into the layered scaffolding of life that viruses have quietly built, not with hands, but with time, with presence, with pressure. Their work is never seen, never loud, yet everywhere we look their patterns remain. In the symphony of evolution, viruses are the soft but persistent percussion, tapping, nudging, altering the rhythm, shifting the harmony ever so slightly. Not with intention, not with foresight, but with effect. Every time a virus slips into a genome, it leaves a chance behind. A chance for something to go wrong, yes, but also a chance for something new to emerge. It is through this repeated reshaping that complexity was born, not in leaps, but in subtle redirections. In the cells of vertebrates, retroviruses embedded themselves across generations, inserting their genetic code into the very blueprint of reproduction, immunity, and development. These integrations were not random scribbles. Over time, they became punctuation marks in the story of life, some full stops, ending harmful pathways, others commas, extending existing functions into novel expressions. And now we know that many of the essential regulatory sequences in our genomes bear the unmistakable mark of viral ancestry. Without them, many genes would remain silent. Without them, some genes would never switch off. The fine-tuning of expression, the orchestration of genetic timing, these too are part of the virus's silent legacy. Let us look now to the immune system, one of life's most intricate inventions. Its intelligence lies not only in its capacity to defend, but in its capacity to remember, to adapt. And what is adaptation if not the integration of lessons from the past? Some of these lessons come from viruses themselves, not just in the form of threats to be remembered, but as tools to be used. The CRISPR system in bacteria, now widely used in gene editing, began as a viral defense mechanism. It remembers pieces of viral DNA and uses them to recognize and fight future infections. It is a memory system, an archive of battles fought and survived. We borrowed it, and now it helps us re-engineer life, correcting mutations, curing diseases, writing new chapters into the genetic script. Elsewhere, lentiviruses, a type of retrovirus, are now tools in gene therapy. Their natural ability to integrate into host genomes is being harnessed to deliver therapeutic genes into human cells, offering hope for conditions once considered untreatable. The same mechanism that once spread disease is now being used to restore health. It is a kind of redemption written in biology, not forgiveness perhaps, but transformation. In plants, viruses act as regulators of resilience. Some viral infections can help plants survive drought or cold, creating tolerance that otherwise would not exist. These aren't engineered solutions, they are natural partnerships. In some grasses, viral presence confers heat resistance that allows them to grow in volcanic soils. In trees, endogenous viral elements may affect flowering patterns, growth cycles, and stress responses. The architecture of adaptation is not human-made, it is viral-guided. And in ecosystems, viruses serve as unseen regulators. In oceans, they determine the flow of carbon, the structure of microbial communities, the health of coral reefs. When a virus infects a bacterium and causes it to burst, it releases organic matter that feeds other organisms. This process, known as the viral shunt, recycles nutrients through the marine food web, supporting entire ecosystems. Without it, the balance would collapse. In this way, viruses act not only on individuals but on systems. They do not merely infect, they maintain. Within the brain, new studies suggest viral elements are active in neural stem cells, influencing their fate, guiding their development. Some of the genes essential for brain plasticity, the ability to learn, to adapt, are influenced by long-retired viral sequences. There is even evidence that some of the mechanisms that enable synaptic flexibility, the brain's ability to reshape itself through experience, may have viral roots. What does it mean that your memories, your learning, your very awareness may owe something to ancient infections? Not in metaphor but in fact, not in fear but in awe. And while we often associate viruses with disease, the truth is more nuanced. Most viruses that live in and on us do not cause harm. The human virome, the collection of viruses that inhabit the body, is immense, diverse, and largely unstudied. Many of these viruses are phages that infect bacteria, helping to shape the microbiome. Some may even regulate inflammation, prevent infections, or modulate metabolism. They are not just passengers, they are co-authors. It is easy to see viruses only when they bring pain, when outbreaks occur, when lives are lost. But these moments are only a sliver of the whole story. Most of what viruses do remains hidden, folded into the rhythms of life. Their greatest work is not disruption, but design. They shape species, not by force, but by offering variation, by introducing novelty, by rearranging the deck of possibility. Evolution is not a straight line. It is a collage, a mosaic, a slow turning of patterns. And viruses are the hands that shuffle the pieces. This reshaping continues now in real time. New viral integrations are still happening. Genomes are still being rewritten. We are not finished. We are not static. Even now the architects are at work, not drawing new plans, but nudging the old ones, testing new arrangements, asking life to try again. And we, the children of such a long, quiet collaboration, continue to change, to adapt, to grow. So the next time you think of evolution, think not only of the fossil record of bones and teeth and feathers, think also of the invisible, of sequences that entered quietly, stayed silently, and slowly reshaped the entire architecture of life. Think of the viruses not as invaders, but as collaborators, not as mistakes, but as unlikely engineers. They have no agenda, no mind, no will. And yet they are among the most influential forces this planet has ever known. They do not create life, but they shape what life becomes. Their presence rewrites the story again and again until something unexpected appears. A lung, a limb, a mind, a soul. And in that perhaps, we begin to understand the most profound truth of all, that even the smallest thing, when woven through enough time, can move mountains, can shape minds, can build worlds. And now let us arrive gently at the final arc of this story, not as an ending, but as a soft unfolding, a widening of understanding. For the invisible architects of evolution do not rest, and they do not retire. They continue endlessly in silence. They are the editors who never stop revising, the wind that reshapes the dunes, the tide that redefines the shore. They are written into the blueprint of life itself, not as a single chapter, but as the margins on every page. And though we may never see them with our eyes, we feel their presence in every pulse, every adaptation, every secret coded within our bones. Even as we age, these quiet architects remain with us. Some viral sequences embedded in our DNA grow active again in later life, influencing how cells respond to stress or repair damage. In neurodegenerative conditions, researchers have discovered that reactivation of certain viral elements may play a role in inflammation or cell death. These are not new infections, they are echoes reawakened. It is as if parts of our genome, long thought dormant, stir once more to shape the last chapters of our biology. And still, even in their awakening, they are not simply agents of harm. They are participants in the process. They are parts of us. Our understanding of viruses is still so limited. We often think of them as simple, just strands of code wrapped in protein. But the deeper we look, the more complex they become. Some carry accessory genes that affect how cells behave. Others collaborate with different viruses to increase their success. Some even appear to repair their hosts in exchange for a quiet life. There are viruses that infect other viruses, virophages they are called, and viruses that live within larger viruses as passengers. The viral world is vast and layered, filled with its own ecosystems, its own hierarchies, its own rules. And yet they remain dependent. A virus cannot live alone. It must enter a host, borrow machinery, replicate with help. This dependency is often seen as weakness, but perhaps it is something else. Perhaps it is a lesson that even the smallest things need relationship, that even the agents of change cannot act without connection, that all life, from the simplest particle to the most complex mind, exists in a web of reliance and response. The virus reminds us that transformation does not happen in isolation. It happens together, in tension and exchange. In this way, viruses are not just architects of biology, but teachers of humility. They show us that change comes from interaction, from friction, from the smallest shift in structure. They reveal that even what seems harmful may carry the seed of something greater. They remind us that life does not evolve in a straight line, but in spirals, revisiting, revising, renewing. That progress is not built from purity, but from combination, from the meeting of difference. And what of the future? Scientists are beginning to design synthetic viruses, tools that can edit genomes, fight disease, deliver medicine with unprecedented precision. These engineered agents borrow the structure of their natural cousins, but are guided by intention. They are part of a new partnership between human knowledge and viral possibility. Yet even this partnership is built on what came before, on the millions of years during which viruses shape the rules of interaction, the dance of genes, the balance of survival. We are not the first to wield their power. Evolution has been using viruses as tools long before we had names for them. We are only the most recent apprentices, learning from the oldest teachers, And if we are wise, we will approach this power with reverence, not fear, not arrogance, but respect for what it has already built. There is a stillness in this thought, that within every living being are the fingerprints of things that never lived in the traditional sense. That the code we call human includes lines borrowed from distant viral ancestors. That your heart, your brain, your immune system, your very ability to be here now, all of it carries traces of the invisible architects who came long before. They were never invited, never chosen, but they remained, they shaped, they stayed. And that is the essence of evolution. Not force, but persistence. Not destruction, but redirection. Life does not always choose what enters it, but it decides what to do with it. It weaves even its wounds into strength. It folds even invasion into identity. It is not clean, but it is beautiful. So as you lie here, perhaps preparing for sleep, let this story wrap around you like a soft blanket. This knowledge that you are not only descended from ancestors of flesh and blood, but from fragments of code, from viral echoes, from architects without faces who left behind no statues, no names, only influence. You are their legacy. You are their architecture. You are not only the product of what was passed down in love and choice, but also of what was survived, what was integrated, what was transformed. Close your eyes now and listen not to the noise of the day, but to the stillness beneath. In that quiet, there is building. In that quiet, there is shaping. Inside you, the architecture continues, genes switching on and off, cells responding, signals being sent. And among all this, the viral whispers remain, not as danger, but as design, not as fear, but as foundation. You're not broken, you're not invaded. You're the result of a long, intricate collaboration between what is and what was once considered other. You're evidence that life can take even the smallest fragment and turn it into a cathedral. And in that truth there is peace. Rest now, invisible architect. Your story is still being written.